Okay, so I'm going to show you how to make a ring out of walnut and aluminum. The walnut is 1/4 inch thick and the aluminum is just simple sheet metal that you'd use to repair a duct. We're going to be doing the most of the shaping with the disc sander, where we're going to be using the drill press to drill out the hole in the middle for the finger to go. So I'm going to cut out 2 different squares to sandwich the aluminum in between to make the ring. My ring size is roughly 3/4 of an inch. It's slightly larger than that, but I can drill it out with a 3/4 inch drill bit and file it later. So I'm going to be cutting these out using the scroll saw, but you can use any hand saw or a band saw or something like that. I'm using a scroll saw because it's the fastest way I have of doing it, and I'm a lazy person. Now, I've made 2 of these before. One of them for my brother and one for his fiancée. I've discovered through my various experimentation, Gorilla Glue and epoxy don't work very well to hold it together. I have discovered, however, that super glue does work to hold it together. As you'll see later in the video, I did something off because it does come apart. But if you do it correctly, it should work. So before we glue them together, it's a really good idea to scuff all of the gluing surfaces with sandpaper. The rougher the grit, the better. This will create grooves for the super glue to flow into. Now, I used a super glue, just regular super glue. You should probably use a thicker version of super glue, like a super glue gel or something like that. And that will probably hold better than this one did, because this one comes apart later in the video. So you just put a little bit of super glue on. I did mine in a circle pattern because I'm super fancy. And don't worry about putting too much glue in. There is no such thing, trust me. I did the wrong surface on this one. That may also have been why it came apart. So now I'm just going to clamp them together using 2 spring clamps. You could probably use a vise or a bar clamp or anything else, but those were easy. So I have a 3/4 inch Forstner bit in my drill press, and I'm going to drill through my walnut and aluminum sandwich. It was right about here when it split apart, and I realized that the super glue must have broken the bond. I shouldn't have let go of it with pliers, that was my mistake. But I imagine what happened was the heat from the Forstner bit building up when it was cutting through the aluminum broke the super glue bond. But I don't know if that was the problem, or if I didn't use enough glue, or I should have used the super glue gel, I know that. So now I'm gluing these 2 back together after they came apart at the drill press. I'm just putting a little bit of glue. I scuffed up the surfaces a little bit. That should help. You have to be careful if this happens to line up the hole that you drilled in it so you don't have to re-drill it. That was me poking my finger in, checking to see if it was flush. and then you're going to clamp these together using the spring clamps. So now I am just taking off the corners of this square to make it more of a circle shape so that there will be less sanding coming up. So I'm using the scroll saw for this, but you could do this, you could even skip this step if you wanted to. You don't actually have to do this, it's just easier. So now we're going to start doing the actual shaping. I have my vacuum set up to suck away most of the dust here, because this is a very dusty process. I also have a glass of water to dunk the ring in if it gets too hot, which I do once. But this is a fairly simple process, especially if you rounded off those corners. So now that's the general shaping done. It's still a little thick, and it will go on my finger, but it will not come off my finger very easily. So now we need to sand it so it gets skinnier. You don't actually have to turn on the sander for this, it's safer if you don't, in fact. But since I want to be done with this reasonably soon, I'm going to be using that. And I'm using the Dremel tool to round over all of the corners and shapes, and to spread out the inside so it fits. Now I'm just using a simple piece of 220 grit sandpaper to take out all the deep scratches. There's a better angle of it. And I'm using a tube from a spindle sander to sand out the inside. And I'm using fast drying polyurethane to coat it.